Episode 2. My brain is a terrible roommate. Maybe these voices in my head aren't a genius, just loud and wrong. Shocking. I know, right? Why was this way made? I wrote this because I need to check myself. I have voices in my head all the time that go 1,000 miles an hour, and a lot of times they are just plain wrong. For a long time, I believed that these voices in my head were right. I let these voices take over me and affect my life. I believed that I had no control over these voices, but deep down I did. My mind constantly told me, I'm not good enough. I will always be a disappointment. No one likes me. I will always be a burden. There's no point in trying, so forth and so on. Looking back now, the voices were keeping me from my highest potential. I needed to learn how to challenge them. For example, I say this to myself sometimes. I should be further along in my life by now. But I have to challenge it and say, everyone moves at a different speed, and I am doing the best that I can right now. So sometimes I need to challenge these thoughts. I need to question the voices in my head. Is this a feeling that I am truly having based off facts, or is it based on fear? This way reminds me that I can control my voices and I don't have to let them take over if I don't want them to. I can tell my head to stop. Just because I think something doesn't automatically make it completely true. Sometimes my thoughts are based on fear or trauma, such as past experiences and the way I grew up. The goal isn't to stop these thoughts, it's to learn which ones deserve my attention and which ones don't. What did my voices in my head look like? For a long time, I didn't realize how much the voices in my head had over my life. They convinced me that no matter what I did, I wasn't going to be good enough. They convinced me that if I made a single mistake, like sometimes I do when I speak in these podcasts, life was going to fall apart. They tried to isolate me away from people. Sometimes those voices in my head would tell me positive things, but then other times they were negative, and I felt like I couldn't control them. Other times they sounded like people in my life that were talking down to me, and sometimes they were even my own voice. The hardest part was having to challenge them and try to stop them because they were affecting my confidence. I was beginning to question every part of myself every day. Looking back now, I can see those thoughts were not protecting me like I thought. They were slowly killing me and my confidence. Some of the biggest lies that I believed were I'm not good enough. I will never amount to anything. I will always be a failure. No one will ever love me. I will always have to do things myself because no one will ever show up for me. Once I reach this goal, I'll be happy and not have to do anything else. Because I believe those lies, I've stopped trying to succeed because I didn't think I ever would. I stopped hanging out with friends because I thought I was burdening them with my presence. I avoid people like it was the plague because if I was by myself, I only had myself to disappoint, not other people. I avoided I avoided hanging out with friends and learning new things. Instead of helping me, those thoughts made me feel lonely and depressed. The more I listened to them, the lower I was feeling. Eventually, I realized if I don't stop listening to them, they were going to slowly kill me and everything about me. Just because a thought is loud doesn't mean it's true. Fear, anxiety, and trauma can sound very convincing, but that doesn't mean that they deserve to be in charge of my decisions. My story. One of the biggest examples of these voices in my head happened recently when I started having really bad panic attacks. My mind immediately started racing. I kept thinking something had to be seriously wrong with me. The voices in my head convinced me that I was not going to get better, that I was failing, and that I was completely alone. Every little thing felt like proof that those thoughts were true. If someone didn't text me back, I thought they were upset with me. If I had a bad day, I convinced myself I was always going to feel that day. My mind took one difficult moment and turned it into a life sentence. Because I believed those thoughts, I became exhausted. I wasn't sleeping. I questioned myself constantly, and I let fear make decisions that I should have made with a clear mind. Looking back now, I realized that those voices in my head weren't telling me the truth. They were speaking from fear. The truth was, I was going through a hard season. Having panic attacks didn't make me weak. Struggling didn't mean I was failing. It simply meant I needed support and time to heal. If I could go back and talk to myself during that time, I would say, Katie, your thoughts are not facts. You don't have to believe everything your anxiety tells you. This season won't last forever, and you are stronger than you think. That experience taught me that my mind can be incredibly convincing, but convincing doesn't always mean correct. Today, when those same thoughts show up, I try to pause before believing them. I ask myself whether I'm listening to the truth or listening to fear. The voices may show up from time to time, but they don't get to make my decisions anymore. Let's talk about you. As you've been listening today, maybe you've realized that believing some of the voices in your own head, that you've been believing some of the voices in your own head. Maybe you've been telling yourself that you're not good enough. Maybe you've convinced yourself that you'll never change. Maybe you've been carrying around guilt, shame, fear, or anxiety for so long that you've started believing those thoughts are who you really are. Can I encourage you to ask yourself a few questions? Who told you that you weren't enough? Is that thought actually true, or have you just heard it so many times that it feels true? If your best friend came to you and said the exact same things about themselves, would you agree with them? Or would you remind them how valuable they really are? Sometimes we're so much kinder to everyone else than we are to ourselves. What if you started showing up for yourself and started showing the same grace and compassion that you would give to everyone else? What would your life look like if you stopped believing every negative thought your mind threw at you? I know it isn't easy. Some of these thoughts have been with you for years, but just because they've been there for a long time doesn't mean they have to stay in charge. You have the power to question those thoughts instead of automatically believing them. You deserve to live a life led by truth instead of fear. You deserve peace. And if it all starts by asking yourself one simple question: is this thought helping me or is it hurting me? This week's challenge. Before we end today's episode, I want to leave you with a small challenge. I don't want you to try to change your entire way of thinking overnight. I simply want you to become aware of these voices in your head. This week, every time you notice a negative thought, write it down. It can be on a piece of paper in your journal or in the notes app on your phone. Then ask yourself these four questions. Is this thought based on facts or fear? What evidence do I have that this thought is actually true? Is there any way I could, is there any other way I could look at this situation? What would I tell someone I love if they were having the same thought? Then write it down. Then write down a healthier, more truthful thought to replace it. Remember, you're not trying to pretend everything is perfect. You're simply trying to learn these challenges, learning to challenge the thoughts that have been running your life. You don't have to believe every thought that enters your mind. The more you practice challenging these thoughts, the easier it becomes to recognize the difference between fear and truth. Awareness is where change begins. Be patient with yourself this week. You're learning a new way of thinking, and that takes time. If there's one thing that you took away from today's episode, it's this. Sometimes the loudest voice in my head is fear, not the truth. Just because my mind says something doesn't mean it's true. You have the power to question your thoughts instead of automatically believing them. Healing doesn't healing doesn't happen because the negative thoughts magically disappear. Healing happens when you stop giving those thoughts control over your life. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I know these conversations aren't easy, and I'm grateful that you chose to be here. If this episode encouraged you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need to hear it. You never know who is fighting battles in their own mind. Next week, we're going to dive into way 3. I am letting go of the wheel because clearly I've been driving straight into chaos. We're going to talk about what it means to let go of trying to control every outcome, why surrender isn't the same thing as giving up, how letting go can actually bring more peace into your life. Until then, remember this. You are not your mistakes. You are not your fears. You are not every thought that crosses your mind. You are stronger than than you realize. Every time you choose truth over fear, you're taking another step towards peace. Take care of yourself this week. Be kind to yourself, and I will see you in the next episode. Yeah.